Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Privileged and Confidential podcast. Today's guest is Reid Klosowsky and Bill Maroney. They are the co-founders of FreightThink. We are going to be talking about what they do on a day-to-day basis in terms of logistics, what that means, how tariffs are impacting the businesses that they advise. They are two top people in their industry. They started FreightThink to help companies in this area. So Bill, Reid, we are so excited to have you on the show today.
Excited to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, okay. Francesca.
So as a lawyer, right, I need to understand almost every single part of the company as a business attorney. And logistics is always one of those areas that it seems so complicated. There's so many moving parts. It involves legal. It's contractual relationships. And when things go wrong, lawyers get pulled in, but it's so important, I think, for whether you're an attorney or whether you work in business to understand really what it is and how it impacts a company. Can you just give us an overview really of what logistics is and then talk a little bit about what you do on a day-to-day basis to help clients?
Yeah, absolutely. And Bill and I will kind of tag team here. He and I, in a real sense, were tag team members at Bed Bath & Beyond for years in retail. And so what we do with our clients today is to help them navigate those complexities that the troubled waters that we've seen over the years, literally in imports and supply chain disruptions. And a lot of that work that we do today is focused on trying to help our clients reduce costs, plan better, do things that they know they need to be doing, but they're all short-staffed or under-resourced in a way, and can use our kind of complementary and our deep experience in especially retail supply chain to help them navigate those waters. And so we've been really fortunate since starting FreightThink almost 3 years ago now to continue to work with a lot of our former colleagues but see a lot of different organizations, large and small, and they're all dealing with the same problems. It's universal.
Especially in the digital economy.
Yes.
For sure. And to add to kind of what Reid said, and I'm going to talk about a word you used and a word that Reid used, okay? So, Francesca, you had said logistics, and Reid said supply chain. All too often, those words are used interchangeably, and they're not the same thing. The reason that people use them interchangeably, oftentimes when they mean logistics, your word, they dress it up and call it supply chain. But it's not. Supply chain is when you really start to integrate the various parts of the business, the procurement, the planning, the demand, the movement of goods, the store, and weave them together into a cohesive strategy. That's a supply chain. All too often, people take their logistics department, rebanded supply chain, and operate in the same silo they always operated in. And that's kind of where our secret sauce is. We try to bring together sort of the product side of the street and the logistics and transportation side of the street so that they work harmoniously rather than either A, independently, or worse, sometimes to each other's mutual disadvantage.
That's exactly why we wanted you on this show today. And for people who really aren't doing this on a day-to-day basis, but it's the core of a business, getting products to customers as quickly as possible, arguably as cheaply as possible these days. So when you are helping clients, it sounds like you're doing the strategy and really the overall consulting piece. But Reid, you mentioned something that I kind of want to go into on how you help clients save costs. So it's similar for law, where a lot of people don't like lawyers because they wait until there's a major problem to use a lawyer. So how can people work with you more proactively to save costs instead of just continuing to do what they're doing and then until they see a huge profit margin decrease because of their inefficiencies?
Well, and that's where I think, the focus on the logistics portion in the supply chain often allows us to find quick wins. There are things that can be done to prioritize cost savings to help pay for other things that you want to get accomplished. But oftentimes looking at transportation contracts, rates, service partners can take some significant real dollars that are costing, the business profit margin and return that back without increasing sales, doing a lot of tech changes. There are things that can be focused on contractual carrier service levels, service partners that can return real value quickly. And then you start to do things where even like behaviors are focus on behaviors that the company has rules. For instance, some of the rules companies put in place, a certain transit time has to be met for a particular customer type or a product type. And when you start to say, well, okay, if we're going to live within the bounds of that requirement, this is what it costs. But if we were to expand that time range, what does that do to your cost structure? And is it meaningful? Does it kind of open the executive team or your CFO's eyes to say, oh, well, why were we requiring it to be a 2-day transit? I'm saving 5% on every transaction if I open that to 3 days, those kinds of things. So there's a contractual aspect, there's a behavior aspect, and oftentimes we can get at those very quickly in the logistics portion of your supply chain, the transportation and movement of goods.
Yeah, a big piece of that is connecting the dots because you mentioned, Francesca, speed, and you mentioned cost. There's kind of a third leg of that stool, and that's predictability. And those are really the three big things: speed, cost, and predictability. And predictability you could also call visibility, which is kind of knowing where it is at the moment. Generally speaking, you can't have all three of those things: low cost, high speed, high level of predictability. Usually you can't have all. You oftentimes can have two. So the important thing is deciding which is the right two for the project at hand. And it's not always the same answer. So sometimes, again, if we go back to retail, Bed Bath & Beyond knew pretty reliably how many white towels it was going to sell on an average week. So we didn't need to move those quickly. We just need to move those predictably and cost effectively. Speed wasn't all that important. But when you have a high-risk product, fashion or trend or a tech item that can be outdated in 6 months, then speed and low inventory become very important. So paying for those things, paying for the speed that allows you to keep your inventory adequate but small or important. So it's back to understanding the needs of the product and the realities of the logistics and bringing those together into a holistic answer.
So with speed, given the state of the world and the digital economy, how has Amazon transformed supply chain and logistics? What were you seeing like pre-Amazon versus post-Amazon? How has your job evolved?
Well, certainly on the consumer side, the e-com customer, they now have an expectation of speed that's a day or two, 3 on the outside. Longer than 3, they're pretty antsy. We saw a study about 6 months ago that said 5 or 6 years ago, a week was fine. Now people expect 3. 2 and 1 is better, but but that has kind of flattened. Over the past 2 or 3 years, they've kind of stabilized at 3-ish days as a max, not kind of as an average.
Okay.
And they haven't said, hey, I need it today. I need it tomorrow. They like it. 3 is kind of the cutoff, but that means that other people have to play in that space. And if in the 3-day space, and if your business is located in a corner of the country, say in San Francisco, well, it's hard to service the whole country without spending a lot of money to get there in 2 or 3 days. If you're Amazon or some others where you've got your facilities sprinkled around, you can deliver it to the customer in a day or 2 or 3 at an effective cost. So it's about balancing those two things. And sometimes you can have your cake and eat it too a little bit, where again, leaving it back to the product and saying, well, maybe what I should do is I should take my real high turning, high velocity SKUs and sprinkle those around the country. And the slower moving SKUs, I can leave them in one place the few times I sell them, I can afford the extra freight rather than the burden of the extra inventory. So again, it's bringing together what the product's all about and the logistics realities. That's kind of the freight and the think, if you will, in our name.
There are also things that, shippers technology is a big part of the logistics and supply chain decision making. And so these aspects of visibility, but also choosing the right carrier for the service level and to be dynamic so that you're not making one decision across all of your products, as Bill just said, or even the locations that you're shipping from. Being able to pick and choose real time can save enormous amounts of dollars and result in a customer experience that's much better. Communication is a big thing, especially in, the digital e-commerce experience. And so if there is a delay or there is a disruption, that communication, you're not left kind of wondering. And so visibility also on the planning side for retailers who are shipping product into DCs or stores, that planning aspect makes all the difference, because if you don't know exactly when it's going to be available, then you're ordering too much. You're kind of replenishing on the assumption that your supplier is slow, or you got to build in more lead time to protect the business so that when the customer does arrive on your website or in the store, the inventory is available. It's ready to be purchased. And so you can really get yourself out of whack quickly from a cost perspective and a inventory level, like where your money is sitting can get out of hand quickly. We saw that firsthand in our experiences in the past.
Also, one other piece about Amazon, you mentioned, they've become the largest parcel shipper in the country. So if you think of parcel shipments, small individual boxes, you think UPS, you think FedEx. Well, they're the post office. Well, now Amazon is number one. And they become number one from shipping their own packages. So they've taken that business away from the other carriers I just mentioned and deliver it themselves. And that's caused some disruption in the space where UPS and FedEx and even the post office to some extent, in order to make up for that business, they've been raising their costs. And so the customers that are left with UPS and FedEx really need to behave more efficiently to figure out how to offset those costs, and whether it's choosing the right service level or making sure the box isn't too big or managing the distance of haul. Those things, Amazon has, by extension, made that piece very important beyond just what they sell, but how they've become a transportation player.
With the disruption, I think that's why it's so critical. Businesses, it's why you're here, it's why you have your jobs, is it's so important to be auditing your agreements, looking at your processes, because it could make or break a business if you're not on top of all of these factors that you've considered to help save businesses costs. Just from a pure operational perspective with what's going on in the digital economy, but also can we talk about tariffs and how that, just like layering that on, how that impacts now businesses making these decisions and kind of how you are advising clients and helping them navigate what's going on politically and with tariffs?
Well, there aren't a lot of choices at the moment, but a good response, and we're helping our clients with that aspect of reducing costs. And so as one side of the business is increasing, the cost of goods and those taxes that are being added to product, you have to remain competitive in the space. And so finding offsets to that is, a really significant approach, because the decision points around sourcing locations, countries that you can move to or bring it back, nearshoring it, those take time. They're not decisions you can make immediately. And so one of the approaches is, we try to help our clients reduce costs on the other side of the equation so that you can reduce that markup, especially in the retail space. You can reduce that markup because you can't just eat the tariff. It has to be passed along. And finding places to do that, and it may not come from one thing, multiple areas in the supply chain, like we were saying, carrier relationships, contracts, behaviors, even the planning aspect, buying up front. Those are all things that you can do, because everyone, it's impacting everyone. And so it buys you some time to make those longer term decisions around where ultimately you're going to source these products, and are there more favorable countries, or does it make sense to bring it back home and buy it domestically?
Yeah. Also, who's paying the tariff? So, for example, if you've got a factory overseas and you're buying a shirt from them for $10, and let's say there's a 20% tariff, well, that would be $2 if the buyer pays the tariff. But if the seller pays the tariff, they may value that shirt at the $4 it costs them to make it. So they may just pay the tariff on that $4 when the customer might have to pay tariff on $10. So, and there's steps in between as well. So there's a lot of nuance to it. It's not just a straight percentage, but a percentage of what? And managing that, managing it legally, of course, and managing it optimally are tactics that in a low tariff or low duty world were kind of afterthoughts. Now, in a high tariff or high duty world, they move to the front of the line.
It's fascinating. And I think, thank you for even coming on the show and sharing this, but thank you for starting the company. I know that you were at Bed & Bath, but being able to give this consulting and advisory to all types of businesses, including emerging brands that are quickly able to grow from a couple $100,000 to a $10 or $20 million consumer product brand overnight, need this type of advice. It's similar to what we do from an IP perspective too. So thank you so much for even starting the company and offering these types of services. If people want to connect with you, or if they want to learn more about how you can help them, what's the best place for them to reach you?
Well, they could go to our website, which is simply FreightThink.com. They can email us direct. We also have an info@FreightThink.com. But if we we post it, our email address, and we have a phone number where you can get us quickly, and we engage personally with each of our clients. So we're very engaged in every activity, both Bill and I. So thank you for having us on today. This is
really
a treat for us, and we really enjoyed having the conversation with you.
I'm so glad. Thank you guys for coming on the show. This was Privileged and Confidential, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.